This is the Free Radicals podcast, and I am your host, William Lohman. This is the second season, the 500-year-old story of the Zurich Anabaptists. Episode 2, Appealing to External Authority. The year is 1521. It's a cool fall day in Zurich, Switzerland. Outside of the city, the last of the harvest is being cut. Shipments of grain and hay are floating up the Limmat River that runs through the city, as farmers start making their preparations for winter. In a tavern in the old town, the evening meal has been served, but the nighttime revelers haven't arrived. Jacob Grable, a man in his late 50s, sees a familiar face across the room and decides to wander over and say hello. "Good evening, Father Mons. I wasn't expecting to be blessed by your presence tonight." "Yes. Hello, Governor Grable. Since my time at the cathedral has ended, I have been traveling, but Zurich is still home." "You might have left the cathedral just in time. Things have only gotten more difficult since you left." I gather you're not a fan of the new priest either. It's bad enough that the monk in Wittenberg is stirring up so much trouble, but now our new young priest reads a little bit of Erasmus and thinks he needs to start a new reformation here, too. I like what he has to say about mercenaries. It's long due that we put an end to that, but somehow he's got it in his head that he can get rid of everything else that he doesn't like. The leaders of this city gave him the job, so he should be accountable to you. But ever since he survived the plague, he acts like God healed him, so that he could then go on to destroy the church. Every time I talk to traders from other cities, they shake their heads. This reformation is going to cost us money. The old guard should have shut him down a long time ago, but he's so popular with the people. I agree with you about the mercenaries, but I can't think of any other reason why people like him so much. Everyone likes to see a clown up front, but not in a cathedral. Well, that's partly why I came over to talk to you. When was the last time you spoke with your son?" "My son? Is that what this is about? Are the priests where you came from in Gruningen more righteous than us in the big city?" No, I'm not here to shame you for having a son. I like Felix. He's an eager young man." "Not eager enough to get a job, despite the university tuition I've paid for and the connections I've used." "You and I have that in common, too. My son Conrad has been kicked out of 2 expensive schools with nothing to show for it but a few bruises and the company of more low-class women than I want to admit. He's still living at home, but he has started taking classes with this new priest, Felix too. They are really enjoying it." "Classes? What kind of classes?" "They're studying the Bible together. It seems Conrad learned some Greek in Paris. He says your Felix might be the best Hebrew scholar they have. I don't know what to think of these classes, but I have never seen my son work so hard or be so excited about anything in his life." "What are they trying to do? Give us a German Bible?" I think so, yes." "That's radical thinking. Those boys better be careful. That kind of talk could get them in a lot of trouble. The kind of trouble where your money and my connections won't be able to help them anymore." The new people's priest in Zurich was Ulrich Zwingli. He was hired in 1519 as the parish priest, bringing new energy and new ideas. He had been well loved during his previous 13 years as a priest in smaller Swiss communities. In Zurich, however, not everyone was excited about his arrival. But whenever he faced challenges about something new that he was teaching or something old that he wasn't teaching, he would refer to an external authority, not the bishop, not the pope or anything that they had written, but the Bible itself. Around this time, the Renaissance had brought to Europe a renewed appreciation of classic works of art and literature, and that back to the basics approach changed the way that everything from art to science was taught. So it was only a matter of time before it started to inform biblical scholars. Desiderius Erasmus was one of these scholars who wrote books about peeling back centuries of tradition to inform how the Bible could be read. That approach inspired Luther, Zwingli, and other reformers, whether or not their conclusions were the same. In the minds of the common people of Zurich, and all of Europe for that matter, there was no shortage of political crises and scandals involving the Catholic Church and its leaders. But Ulrich wasn't just taking shots at the failures of the established church. He was building something new and exciting. So when his authority and credibility were questioned, and people didn't like that Ulrich would say one thing and the other priests would say something different, the town council evaluated the arguments and declared that Ulrich was right. And all priests were ordered to preach a version of the gospel that lined up with Ulrich Zwingli's version of the gospel. He still had opponents, in and out of Zurich and in and out of the broader church. But his support, popularity, and influence were only growing. One of Ulrich's friends was Christoph Froschauer, who owned the print shop in Zurich. He printed books by Erasmus, pamphlets by Luther, and sermons by Zwingli, and he made a lot of money doing it. But for this printer, it wasn't enough to just print controversial works. One day, he decided that he would do a little controversial work of his own, and his powerful friend was there. It's now spring in Zurich in 1522. On the church calendar, they are in the season of Lent, when Christians were supposed to be preparing their hearts and minds to remember Jesus' sacrificial death and resurrection. To that effect, they gave up meat and sometimes other pleasures. At least, they were supposed to. At Froschauer's print shop, a long day of work was just wrapping up. The regular industrial smells of ink and glue were mixed with the odors of human perspiration. And the industrial sounds of the printing press have now given way to the laughter of the co-workers. Normally, they would be paid and sent home, but they had been told to wait. Their boss, Christoph Froschauer, and their priest, Ulrich Zwingli, were talking about something. It was the priest's writing that they were printing, and he would sometimes come by to investigate the work. But it didn't look like that was what was happening this time. As they wait for their pay, two workers try to decipher what's happening. What do you think they're talking about? Beats me, kid. They're laughing. That's a good sign. Still, I would rather just get paid and go home to my wife. Is that beer I smell? Okay, she can wait a little longer. Shh, listen. All right, thanks everybody. You've worked hard today, and you deserve something to eat. I'll get the ladies to bring everything out to the table, and if anybody asks, you can tell them it was my idea. Look, they're bringing out beer and sausage. Enough for everybody. They're trying to see if we will eat the sausage in the middle of Lent with the priest watching. It's got to be a trap. It's not a trap. You heard the boss say that if there's any trouble, he'll take it. No. My mother always told me that if we break God's law, the Lord himself will punish us. Look around. God isn't striking anyone dead. Nobody's choking on the sausage. You don't have to tell your mother. Besides, Master Ulrich is always saying that Lent is a human tradition, not a biblical command. Is that true? Do I look like someone who knows how to read? I'm happy to take the priest's word for it, and his students are here. All they do is read the Bible together. I don't think you or your mother knows any better than they do. Yeah, but the priest still hasn't eaten any sausage. That's up to him. He can probably afford to eat like this the rest of the year too, but I can't. Neither can you. Dig in, my boy. This is the good stuff. You promise you won't tell my mom? Ulrich Zwingli and his friends weren't afraid to stir up a little controversy every now and then. This excited his supporters, and it angered his opponents. Some people could tolerate a few linguistic changes in churches. And the Pope hadn't won any friends in the city with his treatment over the years, but not everybody agreed on what was sacred and what was profane. The Bishop of Constance still had official jurisdiction over Christian worship in the city, so he sent a message to the city council that they shouldn't be putting up with Zwingli's heretical teachings anymore. But the councillors liked Zwingli, and they didn't want to take orders from elsewhere, even if it was representatives of Rome. When they asked Zwingli, the priest said that he would happily debate the bishops, and they, the council, could decide the winner. This was risky territory. Everyone in Zwingli's circle knew it. Heresy wasn't a word thrown around lightly by Roman officials. Men more powerful than Zwingli had been killed by the church as heretics. If Zwingli was judged to speak disrespectfully to the bishop, that could have meant a separate punishment. Plus, the bishop was an official of the church. His education and spiritual authority must mean that he shouldn't be underestimated as a debater. Zwingli and his supporters were confident that they could win, that the issues were easily debated. But they were also sure that the bishop and his representatives were appointed more for their political qualifications than their spiritual ones. Still, they knew that losing this debate would embarrass them and set back the reforms they were trying to implement. They would also have known that Martin Luther wanted a public debate about a long list of things for a long time, and when he was finally given a debate, he lost. Even though almost everyone, including the man he was debating, agreed with him that there was abuse in the practice of indulgences, Martin Luther still lost that debate. Indulgences was the practice of selling certificates that granted the buyer forgiveness of sins for themselves or someone else, for a sin that had already been committed, or for one that they were planning to commit in the future. Luther was simply outsmarted by a tactically better debater named John Eck. Eck teased that Luther wasn't saying anything new, but copying from John Huss, a Bohemian or Czech priest. This may have triggered the man who thought he was initiating his own reforms. And upon closer inspection and study, Luther had to admit that even though he had come up with the ideas himself, he agreed with most of what John Huss had written. This was a problem because Huss had already been declared a heretic. So Luther's admission made it easier for the Pope to declare Luther a heretic as well, and to issue an arrest warrant. Luther managed to survive, and public opinion turned around in his favor, but that wouldn't mean Zwingli could survive the same way. Ulrich and his team would have to know the issues, they would have to know the scriptures, they would have to prepare debate strategy and set up an escape plan if things went poorly. A similar conversation was happening, however, in Constance. The bishop was aware of how public opinion had shifted, and he, perhaps more than Zwingli, could not survive in his position if he lost a public debate. So with no professional debaters available to be sent in his stead, the bishop sent his assistant, the vicar, as his representative at the January 1523 debate. After some wrangling about legitimacy and format, the Zurich disputation went ahead. The two sides presented their arguments and responded to each other. And in the end, the Zurich City Council deliberated before announcing their conclusions. They sent their report back to the Bishop of Constance with the representatives that he had sent to them. Yes, enter. Oh, Johannes, I'm glad to see that you've returned. How was your time in Zurich? Your Excellency, the City Council sends their report. I see. Has our whole delegation returned safely? Yes. By God's grace, we are happy to be back. We only wish the trip had been more fruitful. So there was no contrition from Zwingli. There was no contrition from Zwingli. There was no reverence from Zwingli. There was no decorum from Zwingli. We studied and prayerfully discerned what we were going to say, and we were continually mocked. He questioned our intelligence. He questioned the legitimacy of the offices we hold, and he questioned our very faith in God. The man is a Philistine, and like Goliath, he will soon fall. I don't understand. I thought you were going to observe only. You speak as though you were debating the man yourself. That was my intention. I had no desire to legitimize their debate, their reforms, or their whole process. But he insulted our delegation and me, so I had no choice but to defend myself. But for what? The debate was decided by commoners, by a city council made of traders and artisans. The debate should have been done in front of a council of priests, bishops, scholars even. You're right. And when I turned to the council and reiterated the importance, the power, the meaning of all of our traditions and our institution, they were unmoved. They were unconvinced. I had to bring myself down to debate this man at his level. So the letters you two exchanged before the debate didn't help to increase your respect for each other. Yeah, he was courteous in his letters and then discourteous in the debate. Either the friendly writing was fake or his mockery of us at the debate was only for show. I don't care which one. The man is not fit to be a priest, regardless of what their report says. He is a heretic in my books. They write here, his positions are only grounded in Scripture, and thus he cannot be a heretic. This comes as no surprise to us. Yes, he repeated that often. There's no Lenten fast in the Scriptures. There's no Latin Mass in the Scriptures, over and over again. Does he think he's the first priest to read the Holy Scriptures? That we're all making it up based on what suits us at the time? How does he decide what to eat if it's not in the Scriptures? Yeah, perhaps he has never been to Constance to see how the humanists and the Lutherans, and you, the vicar, and I, the bishop, get along harmoniously. If I see him in Constance, I will have him arrested. His time will come. If he wants to put himself on the other side of Rome, he will be walking a lonely road. The councils of the cities and cantons all around him are loyal to us. Their priests and scholars are loyal to us. We will do what we can to keep it that way. And then our dear Zwingli will see that it is not a good idea to cut ties with us. If he is not stopped, there is no telling what will be next. The Eucharist, Christian soldiers, baptism, all in time, Johannes, all in time. The Free Radicals podcast is written, edited, and produced by me, William Lowen. We can't know what conversations actually happened, but extensive historical research was done to put this story together. Over 500 years of cultural, theological, and linguistic developments complicate this process, so historical and artistic choices were made. I hope you will stay tuned for the next episode.